Getting ready to install this sound deadening and heat shield on the floor of this car. And the stuff isn't cheap, and there's a lot of things to cut around, a lot of holes that need to be made, and a lot of fitting that has to happen. So what you're looking at here is a paper template. I figure I can waste a whole ton of this paper before I can waste one sheet of that mat. It will tell me exactly where to cut holes for things without any kind of guesswork or wasting materials or time. So this Eastwood product is actually pretty easy to work with. I laid the paper template on top of it and traced out all the holes that needed to be cut and the shapes of the edges and all of that, and just cut it out with a regular old shears. Nothing fancy, and I'm pressing it in. I got the top half is put in, or I've got the paper pulled off that. I still have to pull the paper off the bottom half here. But this is probably the most difficult piece to put in because it had all those holes to cut in it, and it went in pretty without any kind of trouble, really. So I'm pretty pleased with that. Mat's installed. It took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. Total time spent on this was about 6 hours. Also, you can see I didn't have enough product to complete the area underneath the back seat. I'm probably not going to worry about that. I could order more of this stuff. But since the back seat is going to cover that up and deaden most of that sound, I'm just not going to worry about it. There is one small job, well, relatively small job left to do on this, and that's to install tape over all the seams. Going to be using this right here. Starting the installation of the carpet. Just have the padding sort of set in there now, just making sure I know where everything goes. This padding is extremely thick. It's also extremely tough. It's very tough to cut through this with shears, as I've been finding out. I've been using electric tools on it when I can. I have all the padding laid out in the car like it's going to be installed. I've got about half of it trimmed up. I've got the passenger side front installed and glued in. The rest of these, you can see I've got to trim them up. This one here is trimmed but not installed. The stuff on the other side, the front is trimmed but not installed, and in the rear it still needs to be trimmed. Got the padding completely installed. It's all glued down with weather stripping adhesive. I'm just going to use double-face carpet tape on the carpet. My brake master cylinder is underneath this access panel, so I'm going to make sure that this piece of carpet here can easily be flapped up so I can check the brake fluid from time to time. The carpeting that I have for this car is actually for a 58. It's not for a 56. There is a difference between them. It's not a huge difference. I can actually modify this to work in the 56. I've had this carpet too long in my shed and try to return it. I've probably had this close to a year, so I'm not going to try to return it at this point, but I am going to modify this carpet to work in the 56. The difference between the 56 and the later cars is essentially the width right here. This is a 58. This is about 1.5 inches wider than what would come with the 56. Now, the difference between the cars was the width of the sill plate. The 56s, this is the sill plate for the 56, has these very wide sill plates. And the carpet is intended to come about halfway up the edge of this and fasten to it on the outside. It doesn't go underneath the sill plate like you'd see on a GM or something. Now on the 58 and later cars, the sill plates were much narrower. Therefore, the carpet has to be wider here to be used with those. But anyhow, I have the wide sill plates. So my solution is simply going to be to make the carpet a little narrower. I'm going to remove this edging. I'm going to make this carpet about 1.5 inches less wide, 1.5 inches narrower, and then I'm going to reattach the edging by hand stitching it back to the carpet. So I'm going to make it work. You'll never know that it wasn't made for a 56 by the time I'm done with it. Of course, it's going to be a little more of a pain in the neck to do that because I have a little bit of hand stitching to do on this stuff here. Being very, very careful, measuring twice, cutting once. Here you get the hole for the clutch pedal, the hole for the brake pedal, and there will be a little bit bigger hole here for the gas pedal. So that's got that rubber boot that has to fit around it, and eventually there will be a hole right around here somewhere for the dimmer switch. I found out through kind of reading on the internet and just trial and error that the easiest way to get these holes in here, and it was also the same thing for the padding, instead of trying to cut it with the shears, although some pieces are going to have to be cut with the shears, these ones that are essentially just holes like this, I'm heating up the end of a giant Phillips screwdriver with a blowtorch and just pressing it right through. I'll show you how that goes here in a minute. As you can see, that's a relatively gentle way of putting a hole through there, and it kind of crustifies or cauterizes the edges too, so it helps you avoid getting a run in it at some point. There's the carpeting installed. Glad to be done with that. As you can see, it turned out okay, given the fact that I had to modify the kit. You remember I told you earlier that this carpet is actually for a 58. Of course, my car here is a 56. The 58 carpet came all the way up to here because the 58s have narrower sill plates, and on the 58 the carpet tucks underneath the sill plate. However, on this car, the 56, the 53 through 56 is actually the carpet butts up to the edge of the sill plate here, and it gets installed with these screws like you see here. I checked authenticity guides for the 56 Golden Hawks, which essentially would have had the same carpet installation as this. This is actually, being a Power Hawk, would have originally had a rubber mat in it, so it didn't even have the carpet. So, but based on the Golden Hawk authenticity guide, I installed the screws on the edges here, just like you see here. I think initially I told you it came up the side a little bit, but that's not actually true after I did some checking. This is installed properly with 5 screws, just like you would have seen out of the factory in 56. You can see I've still got to remove this protective coating from the sill plates. I'm going to wait until I've got the seats in and everything final in here before I do that. I'm going to find some grommets to put around that clutch pedal and brake pedal. As you can see, I've got a grommet for the gas pedal hole, and I do have a grommet for the dimmer switch. It's not installed yet. I'm going to put it back in at some point. You can see I got some wrinkles in the middle there, but I'm going to try to get them out a little bit, but they're all going to be under the seat, so I'm not terribly worried about it. Installed that center console in there just to make sure everything was located correctly, and the carpet sticks about 2.5 inches under the rear seat. Well, that's about all. Thanks for watching.